Distinguished colleagues, my name is Senator Mustapha Bukar. I represent Katsina North. I stand to move the motion that seeks for the stoppage of a bond of 309 billion that is currently being contemplated to finance some alleged shortfall in the electricity sector. And also the need for us to take steps to prevent the collapse of the sector. The Senate knows that when the federal government embarked on transforming the electricity sector by unbundling the government-owned PHCN into 18 successor companies which were sold to private investors, the primary objective are that there would be a constant electricity and increasing access to power to all Nigerians. Further notes that the plan by the Federal Ministry of Power, Works and Housing, using the vehicle of the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading Company, INBET, to raise a federal government-secured bond of 309 billion, allegedly to cover the market shortfall made up of 187 billion accrued in 2015 and 122 billion projected shortfall for 2016. Aware that the market shortfall is defined as the invoice amount of electricity transmitted to the distribution companies in any given month, less the amount remitted by distribution companies to pay the market participants for electricity supply, especially the JANCOs. Worried that this plan massive borrowing is in spite of the intervention by government, such as the bailout by the Central Bank of Nigeria in March 2015, to the tune of 213 billion naira through the Nigerian Electricity Sector Intervention Facility. Equally worried that in spite of that intervention, the shortfall has continued to escalate at a rate of about 15 billion naira per month, which translates to about 500 million naira daily, rising to a total of market shortfall of 400 billion as of December 31st, 2015. Further worried that a continuing incidence of market shortfall is a disincentive for new investors to venture the Nigerian electricity market. This implies that the projected generating capacity expansion is actually an illusion. As a matter of fact, any increment in generating capacity would further aggravate and escalate the market shortfall. In fact, we need to reach about 7,500 megawatts to reach the break-even points for anybody in the sector to be comfortable to meet their costs. Aware that the DISCOs which collect revenues have so far refused to fully pay other market participants, while NEC, which is the regulator, has failed to intervene by stopping this practice and refusing to apply sanctions or penalties on defaulters. Meanwhile, the JANCOs recently advertised in several Nigerian newspapers by warning of an impending shutdown of their operation due to an outstanding 145.7 billion debt. Collectively, these JANCOs, including the 3 hydro stations, account for almost 65% of Nigeria's entire available generation capacity today. Further aware that the successor companies are supposed to borrow funds secured by their respective balance sheets and revenue streams to run their operations. But the Federal Ministry is curiously trying to ride on the Nigerian sovereign guarantee, whereas the DISCOs are not only depriving returns on investment, but there is the likelihood of another tariff increase to accommodate the cost of bonds through what they normally call the tariff, the MYTO last year. Because in 2015, there was tariff increase on the basis of that cost-reflective tariff, which they are still enjoying. Disturbed that in spite of lack of any noticeable improvement in the electricity sector, whether in the area of investment, generation, transmission, or distribution, tariffs have been increased twice since 2013, when the unbundling occurred, without any improvement in services. Further disturbed by the negative consequences of the bond, which would amount to not only feeding the operators in spite of their inefficiency, but of great cost to Nigerians, at the first risk of default would cause the crystallization of the federal government's sovereign guarantee and lead to national emergency crisis in the future. Because so far, if this happens, we would have lost about 500 billion naira, or half a trillion, to the sector that is supposed to have been privatized. Aware that when the sector companies were privatized, the revenue collection stream was significantly high, and there was about 23 billion monthly, which was the level of the PHCN era. That was the area within which PHCN was collecting revenue. Rather than the monthly increase, this revenue has continually declined to as low as 5 billion in August 2016, which means instead of improving, the revenue is actually coming down. And that shortfall is a result of many things that will come down in the motion. Further, aware that tariff computation is a factor of capital investment, which was considered during privatization. But regrettably, there is no evidence that the DISCOs and GENCOs invested in accruing any tangible assets. What if that the new borrowing is being planned to be paid as a fast charge on the market revenue stream ahead of CBN, whereas the first priority is to stop the bleeding in revenue and optimize efficiency by the operators. Further, worried that the excessive distribution companies have failed or neglected to produce audited financial statements to NEC and BPE for the last 2 years. Neither have they held annual general meeting to disclose their performance to the shareholders, which include the federal government. Accordingly, resolves to urge the Federal Ministry of Power, Works and Housing and the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission to immediately halt the raising of the bond by INBET. Urge NAC to live up to their duty by automating the tariff calculation framework for correcting it. Because this has to be done automatically, otherwise you'll never know how much actually has been invested. Immediately set up a monitoring mechanism to measure and enforce full monthly remittance by DISCOs, recoup all misappropriated funds that resulted in the accumulated market shortfalls, and apply sanctions for any default whatsoever, including the threat to withdraw the license of iron DISCOs. Number 3, urge the federal government to immediately provide the statutory leadership positions in NEC, which coincidentally this morning we received the list of members to be on this board, to ensure that the electricity market is saved from collapse and replace the BPE appointed board members representing federal government shares in the DISCOs, which is about 40%, and GENCOs, which varies between 20 and 40%, with competent members. And mandate the Senate Committee on Power Privatization to investigate the post-privatization performance of the GENCOs, DISCOs, and TCN in line with their performance agreements, including any evidence of investment by DISCOs, the management and disbursement of any loans or bonds of the sector agencies, and report back to the Senate within 4 weeks. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the main issue here is that privatization is supposed to bring about expertise and finance. And I think that is why the federal government decided to unbundle the power sector. Unfortunately, if this bond is allowed to go in, it means the government would have poured in 500 billion or half a trillion naira to the market, a market that is supposed to have been actually better managed and better services provided. And this is why it is important to go back to basics and find out where the money has been going. If PHCN era, we were collecting around 23 billion per month, why did we collect 5 billion naira in the month of August? Where had the money gone to? These are things that must be looked into so that the GENCOs are paid for the gas they received. They pay the gas suppliers that they have received from the gas, their gas suppliers. And therefore, there is a need for this Hello Chamber to really look at this issue. Otherwise, the recession that we are talking about, we cannot come out of it unless and until we are able to stabilize the electricity sector. As I said earlier on, anything less than 7,500 megawatts the production will not be sufficient. And I believe we have the installed capacity to produce that amount of electricity, provided we address the shortcomings of the DISCOs and the other successor companies that have actually not been able to have the technical partner they need in order to run efficiently and provide services to Nigerians, especially in the area of metering. this Senate has actually resolved that this issue of metering has to be looked into, because the basic thing is to get the customer base. If that database is not available, it means the discos are collecting money from customers by flat rates or estimated billing, what they call estimated billing. They have not invested in providing meters, and that is why it is much convenient for them to simply ask for people to pay based on estimated billing. And we really don't know how much they have actually invested, and whether or not they have employed the technical partners they brought in when they said they were going to buy the assets of PHCN. These are my arguments, and this is my submission, distinguished colleagues. I hope that we'll be able to support this motion, because it's very important that we look at this critically so that we get ourselves out of the electricity quagmire that Nigeria has found itself. Thank you very much, and I so move.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, distinguished colleagues. I rise to support this motion. To second this motion because it is very, very important. It is a well-known fact that both the DISCOs and GENCOs have not actually invested anything after privatization. And this is the real truth. Secondly, also, in 2014, I remember they were given intervention funds, but up to now we have not seen any improvement also, either on the generation or on the method of collection. Then thirdly, I remember they complained that people were not paying them, but the issue is that they have not put adequate metering facilities that they could be able to detect exactly how people are stealing their power supply from the DISCOs, for example. And the issue with GENCOs, for example, we know that they have this problem because of vandalization by our vendors, that there is no gas that is coming in. But I remember during the committee level, that is around, during that 2014 issue, we sat down and we agreed that they should be given some of these marginal fields so that they themselves can do cogeneration. That means they should be embedded generation. That means they should be able to get gas coming in there, and then the same gas, they will channel it to their own plants. Because with that, since you have the company that produces gas, then you also now channel it to your own plant, and I think you will not have that problem. So I think really, it is a good idea that they should be asked to halt, so that the more money you pump in there, the more losses government will have. Government will continue to bleed in this area, and nothing is coming out of it. And therefore, I wholeheartedly support this motion. Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Any other contribution to this? If not, we'll probably take the motion from Sanyan Yuba, and then we can now take all the prayers together. Senator Hassan.